Hi, happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How are y'all? I just realized I have this fun heart shirt I've been wearing for clients all day, and I don't think you can to do it like that. I don't think you can see, but I've been wanting to, there we go. We can frame it this way. I want to make sure you can see my heart for all of you. I was joking with one of my clients that it was for her, but it's also for all of you. So we need to make sure you can see that. But how are y'all doing? Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is enjoying summer. I feel like I had such a lovely weekend. One of my cousins was in the city. I call her my sister cousin because she actually for a little while lived with us growing up, and I think of her like a sister and a cousin. So she was in the city. We had a fun like girly weekend and went shopping, which I don't always do a lot of, but just like trying fun stuff on. And we had a good, like when someone comes to New York City, like just exploring the city weekend. And Eric, my husband's family, was in town, so we got to show them around a little bit. So we just had like a good fun family in the city. I'm in New York City, for those of you who don't know, weekend. So that was lovely. It was hot, but very lovely. And this weekend, apparently giving you all my summer plans, I'm going to Montana for a really good friend's wedding. I'm going to see some of my girlfriends that I've known for decades and have not seen in a while because everyone has moved to different places, and we're all going to kind of reconvene. I'm having a girls' weekend for that. So I've never been to Montana. Going to Bozeman. If any of you know Bozeman, if you live there, if you've been there, I'm there for like a second. I'm like flying in for the wedding. I'm going to see everyone. I'm going for the rehearsal, the wedding, then flying out. So it's like this much time, but I'll have a little time in the morning. So if there's like a coffee shop I need to go to or a restaurant I need to go to, leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'm not going till this weekend. I'd love to know. Okay, that is all my chit chat. Let us actually talk about today's live stream. I'm like a chatty Cathy today. I'm all hopped up in summer. I'm also spinning around. Before we dive into our live stream, we do a giveaway every week to thank you for being here. I know there's a trillion places, probably literally a trillion places you could be online to hang out, to consume content, and it always means so much to me when we get to hang out and to have you here. So if you are here, whether you're watching live on the replay, we are giving this week away one copy to my self-study course, Get Unstuck, Unlock Your Success. This is a mindset course. It goes through some of the most common mindset blocks that I have found over the years really hold entrepreneurs back. And it gives you some questions and prompts and tools to unpack them. It really dives into what those mindset blocks are, which is really what we're talking about today as well. So it's a really nice booster for that. I have a freebie around this, and this essentially just goes into it a lot deeper so you can understand a little bit and have some awareness around really what is, from a mindset perspective, maybe getting you in your own way, because so much of business, I'd say 80 to 90% of your results in business really are driven by your mindset. So we're giving away one of those. All you gotta do is leave me a comment, leave me an emoji, something like that. We will pick a winner on Thursday or Friday this week, and we'll either DM you or email you. We also picked the winner for the free coaching session from last week's free masterclass. We emailed you, FYI, because I don't think that has booked in. So I want to make sure those winners know they were selected. All right, I need some water. Let's talk about today's topic. So we're totally talking mindset today. And I want to talk about the number one reason you might be hitting an income ceiling. This is something I think I work with, I'd say pretty much all of my clients around, but particularly those clients of mine who are, once they've gotten their strategy going, once they're making some money, I'd say this is one of the biggest things we're looking at, especially if they feel like they're either not making the money they want or they've kind of hit a plateau. So I think kind of thinking through that lens of this can be what we're talking about today, like in terms of hitting that income ceiling. I think sometimes we think of income ceiling as just when it's like, oh, I've made 6 figures and I can't seem to break past that as an income ceiling. But I think we can have an income ceiling as well when we're looking at things like, okay, we've built our strategy, we are showing up, we are doing all the things, we're running the challenges, we're running the master classes, we're doing the reels, we're doing the posts. Don't mind the background noise here, New York City. A lot of noise echoes here, but we're doing all the things and we're not creating that income we want. I think that is one sort of income ceiling that can show up for business owners. And then I think there's also the other sort of income ceiling that we can hit when it's sort of like you're making that consistent income, you have a strategy to scale, right? You're implementing, you're showing up for that strategy, but you're not seeing that income change. And I want to preface with how essential it is to really understand that, yes, absolutely, this live stream is about mindset, and we're going to look at really what that reason is, because it's a mindset reason. I'm like letting the cat out of the bag. However, I'm talking about this through the lens of assuming you do have a strategy in place. You are taking action on that strategy consistently. You do have a container, a channel, a place for the revenue to come through. Otherwise, when we're talking about something like an income ceiling, what we're going to be unpacking today, I really want to invite you first and foremost to look at, do I have a container? Do I have a place for money to come into in my business? So I have an offer essentially that I'm selling in a way to make money. And is that vehicle to bring in revenue? Does that allow me to hit the income I want to make that would allow me to break past that income ceiling? Check in there first, because I'm obviously not coaching everyone individually around this, and I want to make sure we're all solving the right problem, as my coach always says, in business. So that's kind of step one. If you're like, oh, well, I'm selling something that's $15 and my goal is to make $500,000. Maybe it's not so much what Kim's talking about today. Maybe it's more that I might need a container, a vehicle that's going to make it a little easier to hit those revenue goals. Then we want to make sure, do you have a clear strategy that you have clarity around that's going to help you sell into that container? And are you taking action on that consistently? So always when I'm chatting with clients, first we're kind of looking at these things. I always want to make sure that we've got a rock solid strategy. I work with clients for 6 months minimum. Most of my clients have worked with me 4 years. The first part of the 6 months, we're usually looking at their strategy and outlining that and their action plan, right? So before we dive into why you might be hitting income ceiling, I really want you to look at these pieces, because your clarity around your offer and your channel to make money, your strategy and your action, those are absolutely essential for you to make income and to break past an income ceiling. And we need to have that in place first and foremost for us to even see if anything else is going on. So often I tell clients, it's interesting because I'm so big on addressing mindset, but I always want to make sure we have a solid strategy and action plan in place, because then if that's not converting, or if I have a client who's having a really hard time showing up for their strategy, we know then there's something else at play. So I want to present that to you first, so you can kind of use that as a little detective work to see where you're at. And just to be able to identify, kind of where you're at in the landscape of things. Sorry, there's a ton of background noise here and I'm getting completely distracted. New York City and just like all the noises, and it's just making my brain squirrel a little bit. So don't mind me here for 1 second there. Where was I? Okay, so with that piece there, so just having that clarity there first and foremost, and just being able to identify that for yourself, I think is really helpful, so you can address kind of what that right problem, so to say, to solve in your business. However, you're sort of like, well, wait a second, Kim, I've got that clear channel in place and I've got a clear strategy and I'm taking action on that consistently. And like, I'm being honest with myself, like I'm actually showing up consistently, but the results aren't showing up. Either it feels like I'm just doing all the things and I'm not booking clients and I'm not making money, right? Like I'm making money, but I just can't seem to get to this next level. That's what we're talking about today. And I want to identify the biggest thing I see block people from that next level of income. And it's interesting. I had a client message me today. She just broke her record in her business. She's had a 13 or 14K cash month. Today we were celebrating, and I think about how much of the work we've done has really been about what we're talking about today. And this is picking up from last week's masterclass, where we talk about transform your money mindset blocks into gold. And one of the things I mentioned on that, you can go watch, it was a 90-minute class. This will be a lot shorter today. One of the things we talked about on that I mentioned for just a hot second that we're going to dive into deeper today is a quote that comes from Carolyn Elliott. And Carolyn Elliott, you can look her up. We're going to mention her a couple times today. She has a quote that I mentioned last week that we're going to unpack a little bit more, which is, you don't get what you say you want, you get what you actually want. And what I see, again, for hey, whoever is joining on live, nice to have you here. What I see for some of my clients, and this client that I was just celebrating today, who just massively broke through an income ceiling for herself and just had a record-breaking cash month for herself. One of the things we were really working on and looking at is she had a strategy. She's showing up consistently for that, right? The piece that was keeping her from that next level of income wasn't her strategy. It wasn't her action. It was that what she said she wanted and what she actually wanted did not match up. And what she actually wanted, she wanted far more than what she said she wanted. Meaning, she said she wanted these big income months, but on a subconscious level, which is what we're going to unpack a little bit today. And then I'm going to share some really easy tools you can use around this. Really subconsciously, what she wanted was anything but that income. And so everything energetically and mindset that she was putting out was, how do I not create this income? While everything consciously she was saying and doing was, I want this income. And so it was creating a lot of tension. It was doing a lot of this. Anyone else ever been there? I feel like everyone does this at some stage in business where there's a little bit of like, yes, I want this. No, I don't. Yes, I want this. No, I'm freaking out. And this, I just see this through clients over and over again. And our work then is to identify what is the thing you're saying you want, but then what is it that you actually want more? And how can we start to unpack that and create some either safety around it or give you what you actually want, so that we kind of, like we were talking about last week in the masterclass, either so we can transmute that or we might need to make a little pivot there. Let me know if this is making sense for you, because I'm going to unpack this a little bit more, but this is, I cannot stress enough, like this is the work I do myself. If I'm hitting an income ceiling, if I'm hitting a ceiling of any kind in my life, the thing I'm always going back to, if I have the container in place and I have the strategy and action in place, I'm always going back to, what is it that I actually want? Like, how is it essentially serving me to not get the thing I say I want? Now, one last caveat here. I do think it's really important in the business landscape for us to be very, very practical to say results do take time. Results take time, results take time, results take time. I'm always saying that. I think it's very important as we're having today's conversation in particular to remember that. On a minimum, most strategy takes a minimum of 90 days to really start paying off. You can get quick results. We're so available for that. That happens for my clients all the time. And you know, if you were going to go hire someone for Facebook ads tomorrow, they would let you know, even if everything was set up perfectly and you had incredible messaging, you had incredible like funnels set up, it's still probably going to take 90 days for that strategy to start to play off. And that's on a minimum, right? Like, and then over time, that strategy compounds and will give you bigger and better results. So that's something we want to keep in mind here. This is like assuming you're doing all of these things. If you're still not getting the results you want and your reality that you're seeing is very different from the thing you're saying you want, we want to start to get curious about what is it that you actually want more than what you say you want. Because the truth about all of our brains is, and this is what we talked about a little in the masterclass, we were talking about it from a different lens, so definitely catch the replay on that if you didn't see it, but this is kind of a different kind of piece around it. We talked about this on the podcast as well. I'll see if I can remember that link to share it with you. But I think what we forget is that our subconscious mind and our brain essentially really loves congruence, meaning whatever we believe, whatever we want, whatever subconsciously is going on in our mind, our brain wants to have our outside world match that up as possible. Our brain just wants congruence. It's why things like manifesting work so well, right? If you program your brain and you start to tell yourself you want something, there's literally a part of your brain that filters for things that are congruent to the thing you want. Yes, energetically you can attract it, we can manifest it, through the universe, but just from a practical level in terms of how your brain works, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system that literally filters in things that are congruent with what you're saying you actually want. And that's the practical way mindset manifesting works. It's kind of the same thing here with what we're talking about with what you say you want more versus what you actually want. If what you actually want is to not have to work all the time, or to not have to have a heavy client load, or to not have to deal with all the responsibility that comes from more money, like paying taxes, or having your spouse want to use the money, or your kids want to use the money. Or I think for a lot of my clients, stuff around boundaries comes up in terms of like, how much capacity do they actually have? Like, they want the money, but could they handle that many clients, or could they handle that many people in their program? Or what if people ask for a refund? Or what if there's suddenly way more work they have to do, right? There's usually a lot of things that get kicked up, fears that get kicked up like this. And so what they say they want, more income, it does not match up with what they actually want, which is anything but more income and more clients, because that doesn't feel safe. And if we know the brain loves congruence, and we know we're telling the brain, I want to create congruence around me that matches not having to work a lot, having a smaller capacity, not having to pay a lot of taxes, right? Your brain is going to fight for and look for opportunities that really match that help you to create an exterior that is congruent with what you would to believe to be true about yourself and what those stories, fears are internally. Let me know if this is making sense for you, because I think it's just helpful for us to understand that, because I think sometimes with something like this, I think this can get to be a place where sometimes I notice clients want to make themselves wrong for this, and this is nothing to make yourself wrong about. This is just the human brain and how the human brain works. But I think when we can understand, our brain loves congruence, and if we're noticing the congruence we're creating in our business is not what we're saying we want, that means it is subconsciously likely what we want, the congruence there, which means we have an opportunity to shift that congruence. And if we can shift in our mind what we're saying we want and have that be what we actually want, right, that is going to help us create that in the exterior. That is what then suddenly makes the difference in how you show up in your strategy and how you show up in your containers and how you show up in your action. And that is the rocket fuel that breaks you through the income ceiling. Let me know if that's making sense, because I want to make sure that piece is tracking. Because what this does not mean is if you're not getting what you say you want, you're doing something wrong. What I would say is you're doing everything right. That means you have an amazing brain and your brain is working exceptionally. And it simply means you have a human brain. And if you want to break past an income ceiling, we need to do usually some work to create enough safety, to create enough desire around what you say you want, so that you want that more than what you actually want in the current moment. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I want to, two things I want to dive into as we're unpacking this a little bit. So I wanted to give a couple examples. I know we talked about this a little bit last week, but it was through such a different lens because I was sharing that tool. I wanted to have this kind of, it's like a part two piggybacking on the class today. I want to go through just a couple examples of how this can show up and just talk about the payoff aspect a little bit of this, just so that you can understand it a little bit. And then I will share just really easy mindset work that I love to give clients that I use myself to really help you shift this so that you are shifting that congruence in your mind. And obviously, if you have questions, throw them at me. Everyone's very quiet today, so I'm assuming that means you're just absorbing, but if you have questions, throw them at me. So in terms of, I'm just pulling out my notes. I sometimes just start riffing and I want to make sure that I don't miss the things that I want to say. So what I like to play with when I'm playing, and I say play very intentionally, we are playing with this, right? We're being very light around all of these question marks. What I like to play with my clients when this is happening is really playing with this question mark of what part of you doesn't want clients, or what part of you doesn't want to make more money. And it always is a little jarring because kind of like our brains are always like, I want money. Of course I want clients. And what I want us to keep coming back to today is, well, if we're continually showing up through a strategy and we have a container and that's not showing up for us, there's probably a part of you that on some level doesn't want them. What part of you doesn't want that? And to really get clear on that, and then to understand what that is about, because usually this is a really great insight into the very thing we want to shift, so you can create that congruence so that you actually want clients. An example, I love dating examples. I feel like dating examples are so great for business. An example that comes to mind for me, last week on the masterclass, I was sharing a dating example just in terms of, we were talking about processing. We went through a 7-step process to alchemize, and definitely after this, I think that's a good one to go back so you can get the process. And I was using an example from dating about, maybe why I wouldn't want money more than I say I do want money. The subconscious piece here. I think I just got that backwards, but y'all are picking up what I'm putting down. And I think another example we can look at, if I look through the dating lens, is from that dating example I had shared, when I became single, one of the things I said I wanted was to be in a relationship, and I was dating. I think this is so analogous to booking clients or making money in your business, right? And I was going out dating, and I kept finding myself in situations where I was dating really wonderful humans who were unavailable for a relationship. And at a certain point, I had to get curious about what part of me doesn't want a relationship. Like, if I'm the common denominator here, this is really interesting, right? I have the clarity, I have the strategy, I have the action, and I have a strategy for dating. I'm going out and taking action, and like the same result keeps getting presented to me. And I distinctly remember having this like this was actually before I knew Carolyn Elliott's work, but just having this moment of like, this is really interesting. I'm the common denominator, and I know enough about the brain to know, there is that congruence element. And so, like, what is this about? And it was about that time I had this aha moment where I was like, oh, well, I don't think I actually want a relationship. Like, I don't want a relationship more than I'm saying I want a relationship. I want to hang out with some people, but like I actually just got out of a 10-year relationship. I would like to be single. I would like to have fun. I would like to date. And it was really interesting to notice that, because what I had been saying previous to that was I want a relationship. And, like then I was thinking there was something wrong with me or something wrong with the way I was dating or where I was meeting people, right? And it was very easy then to solve the wrong problem. It must have been the dating app I was on. It must have been something about me and my person. I don't know, like just fill in the like lines or the dots there of all the things I could make that mean. And I think we do the same thing in business, right? There is that analogy of like, we want to go out and book clients, we want to make money. And if that's not happening, it's very easy then to make that mean something about your strategy, or to make that mean something about you or your offer or something you're doing. When if we pull back for a second and we're like, is there a part of you, what part of me doesn't want to date? What part, like, what's the common denominator here? Me. What part of me doesn't want a relationship? Same thing in business. What part of me doesn't want more clients? What part of me doesn't want to make more money? What's so nice is it removes this whole like, now you're in trouble and you're doing something wrong. It just allows you to be really honest. The same way I was honest with dating. It's like, oh, isn't this interesting? I actually don't want the thing I'm chasing. And I think the same thing happens in business. So when I look at clients and when they have big breakthroughs with their income and they like have a quantum leap like we were just talking about, my client today who was sharing that, one of the things we were looking at originally is what part of her didn't want that. And it was really interesting to notice there's generally then speaking kind of that same thing where it's like, oh, interesting. I'm saying I want more clients. I'm saying I want to make more money, but there's a part of me that actually really doesn't want more clients because it's going to feel so heavy to hold, because I think I'm not good enough, because, I mean, y'all, you don't have to share. You're all welcome to, if I think sometimes it is helpful for people to hear these things from one another, but it's just so interesting. It's kind of like if you squeeze an orange, the more like, I just feel like it's like an orange, the more you squeeze it, like the more comes out when we're hitting those ceilings. So look at, again, like what part of you doesn't want that, and just allow yourself to be honest. This is not from a shame blame place. This is from like, let's get really curious. Let's let that part of you really speak the truth, because it's just so interesting what shows up. And then what shows up for you is, generally speaking, the thing we want to do. I'm going to share, there's two different things we want to do around that, but I'm just going to give a couple examples of what that the juice that comes out. I find, so definitely some of the things that come up are those things around capacity, those things around maybe I'm not good enough, but I find some other really interesting ones come up for clients. I know for some of my clients, there's this whole thing around like, then they're going to need a bigger team. What if they're not ready for a team? What if they can't handle a team? What if they're going to have to invest in a team, right? Like that's not even the piece of their business that they're solving, but all of those question marks can start coming up, and it's sort of like they don't want more clients and they want to make more money because all of this stress and agita is coming up around that. It's like, oh, isn't that interesting? For some clients, it's they have just been grinding it out for so long, whether it's in business when they first come to me or in a corporate job, where it's like the part of them that doesn't want clients, it's not even about not wanting to make money. It's just that they want an effing break. They want to have some more fun. They want to have a break, like a little more vacation feeling time. I literally have one client where so much of our work, and she's done exceptionally. She's gone from, I think when she came to me, she was making $500 a month, and now she's making, I'd say between like 7 to 10K a month on average. So from 500 to, I think about 7 to 10K a month. But one of the big things we've played with for her was exactly this. There was a big part of her that didn't want clients more than she was saying she wanted them. And when we had unpacked that, it was so much of this like needing time off and spaciousness. And we've really looked at integrating what we call vacation energy into her business. So I think just using this, hey Lila, nice to see you there. Using these as some examples to see, oh, what part of me doesn't want to make money? What part of me doesn't want to book clients? What part of me doesn't want to scale my business? And to allow yourself to keep asking that question until you get to some truth. Usually I find for a lot of my clients, sometimes their first or second answer is just like that regurgitated BS we give everyone. I don't know if any of you are coaches and know this from your clients, or just have noticed this in yourself. I feel like all of us just have like a couple like standard answers we love to give people, or like the self-awareness we've already like regurgitated to others. And I would invite you to see if you can go a layer deeper than that. I will lovingly sometimes give my clients a hard time. I'm like, yeah, we've heard, like, give me like the actual answer, not like the answer that's just like here's my stamp answer I give to everyone, because this is usually the work for you, and this is usually the very thing keeping you from the thing you say you want, whether that's more income, whether that's scaling, whether that's a relationship, like I was using as an example. Sometimes I find for clients when we're asking this question, why don't you want to make more money? Like, what is it about? Like, what is it about it that, like, why does it feel better not to make money or to not book clients? Sometimes so much of what comes up is literally the fear of more visibility and what they are associating success to mean. If I have more success, I'm going to be more visible. If I have more success, I'm going to have more responsibility. If I have more success, I'm going to have to show up in a different way, right? Like, there's sometimes a big piece like that. I'm just reflecting a few of these examples because I think sometimes hearing those and others can help normalize it, but also it can help us think, oh, shoot, I didn't even realize that was a thing for me. Just to help give you some clarity on a couple of these. I find sometimes too, for some of my clients, it's really interesting when they just have that. I've had a couple of clients where we like have this conversation and it turns out they basically don't want to do the work they're doing or have the business they have or the offer they have, or like there's some piece there that's really out of alignment. And it's like, well, no wonder we're hitting an income ceiling. You literally don't want anyone to come into your business. Like, it's actually always amazing to me when those businesses are making money, but it's like we can tend to see where the income, why there's an income ceiling there, because you don't get what you say you want, you get what you actually want. So those are just a couple of the really common ones I see. I do think there's also just that element, kind of what we were talking about, the taxes piece. I think we all say we want more money. And I think so many of us have so much fear around what it means to have and hold more money, right? Like, I'm gonna have to pay more taxes. I won't know how to manage it. Maybe I suck with money. I'm gonna spend it all away. My family wasn't good with money. It's not just that like people might spend it, but it's just like there can be so much there. And I think this is something we wanna just keep being curious about, because, and this is a little bit to what we spoke on last week's masterclass, but like a slightly different lens. So if you didn't catch that, definitely check back and watch that for the tool we walked through. But what I want everyone to understand here before we kind of talk about some other ways you can shift this is just understanding that everything we do as humans, we do because we do get a payoff, a benefit from that. And none of us are doing anything that subconsciously we think is going to harm us, right? Subconsciously, we all have our own best interests at heart and our own best interests in terms of survival and avoiding pain and seeking pleasure and getting the things we think we want and creating that congruence that we were talking about a little earlier. And congruence is also not just congruence with what you say or what you actually want, but congruence can also be how you identify and see yourself. And so I do think there's also, I don't want to take us on a whole nother tangent, but sometimes the very reason clients don't want to make more money or don't want to book more clients, sometimes there's also just an identity piece there that we have to shift, because there's a whole identity of like, I'm not the kind of person who's successful. I'm not the kind of person who could have a really big business or who could run a team or who could have this many clients or have a really big program or make $1 million, fill in the blank there. So sometimes it's a little bit of an identity piece as well. But either way, I think remembering your subconscious brain loves you. Even if it's kind of got a really fucked up way of showing you that it loves you, it loves you. It wants to give you everything it thinks you want, and it wants to keep you alive. It wants to keep you out of harm's way. And it is always doing things that are in your best interest according to what your subconscious thinks you want, not what you consciously say you want. And so I think we want to remember that, because it's so easy when you start to identify these things to want to start making yourself wrong and giving yourself a hard time. And what I want to invite you to notice is, no. This is your brain doing it right. Your brain is getting something from hitting an income ceiling, from hitting a client ceiling, from hitting a relationship ceiling, a love ceiling, any kind of capacity ceiling. If you're hitting that and you're hitting it over and over again with what we talked about earlier at the beginning of the live stream, if you have that container for results to come in, if you have a clear strategy and you're taking consistent action, we're assuming that's in place. And if you keep hitting a ceiling, there's a part of your brain that is getting such a yummy payoff from that. There's a part of your brain that is like, yes, this feels so good. It feels so good to under-earn. It feels so good to not make money. It feels so good to not book this client because it is meeting this specific need. which is a little bit of what we were talking about last week. Let me know if this is tracking, because I think this is really important to understand. I think sometimes in coaching, when we talk about the payoff, and the payoff essentially means this, that everything we do, if we're doing it because we get some sort of payoff or a secondary gain, even if on the surface it doesn't seem like it's benefiting us. And I think sometimes this can be a confusing concept. Sometimes, coaching will be like, well, how is that serving you? And sometimes it can almost seem like a way to make yourself wrong, where it's like, how is that serving you? As opposed to genuinely, how is this serving you? How is this benefiting you? What's the gain you're getting from this? Because if you can identify that, then you also know, this is so much of what we were talking about with processing the anger and the frustration last week, of that being a need you need to meet. If we can understand the secondary gain your brain is trying to meet, we start to understand how, what your brain actually wants and what we need to shift if you want to be able to break through that income ceiling, break through that client booking ceiling. Hopefully this is tracking. I feel like there's a thing I wanted to say about the payoff piece. It'll come back to me. But I do think that can sometimes be a little bit confusing there. So I want to make sure that feels really clear. This is not from you're doing this intentionally and you're doing this because you get something from it. It's genuinely seeing what is that benefit. And one of the things that I think is really important when you identify that, this also comes from Carolyn Elliott's work. I feel like I've been crushing on her the last couple weeks in our lives, and I've been sharing her book with a lot of clients recently. So I think it's just been coming up on a lot of calls. If you don't know her work, I definitely recommend checking it out. I know some of it's a little controversial, but I do think some of these principles are really helpful, and she has just a different way of looking at it. But what I appreciate about her work, if you've read Existential Kink, she talks a lot about the payoff and the secondary gain, but she talks about it in a slightly different way, where she really talks about essentially getting off on those secondary gains and on the shadow side, on what our brain subconsciously wants and those needs it's meeting versus the things we say we want, as a way to, and she talked about getting off on it as a way to alchemize that so that you can then get what you say you want. I think about it slightly differently from her. I really appreciate the way she speaks about it. But I think it's so important for us to be able to identify those things and then really make them right and make our brains right. Because again, our brains love congruence, and our brains are wanting to, they're doing the best. They're literally doing this in service of us, or you and I, and they're doing that to keep us safe and give us what they want. And I always think of the subconscious a little bit it's sort of like a small child who doesn't have the full understanding of the adult world yet, who's trying so hard to make their parents happy, and is just trying all the things, but kind of sometimes gets it wrong and kind of sometimes misunderstands what the adult is telling the child it wants, right? Sometimes there's just that misunderstanding. And what happens so often if we don't understand payoffs and those secondary gains, what usually happens, I think, is it's so easy then to essentially scold yourself and make yourself wrong and give yourself a really big fucking hard time. And I think if we're using the parent-child example, that to me feels very much like a kid who's trying so hard to please their parents and do all the things right, and this is what I think my parents want, they're saying they need from me, I'm just trying, and then the parent being what the fuck is wrong with you, to a little kid, and yelling at their kid and screaming at their kid. I think all of us can agree. I mean, I'm no parenting expert. I'm a stepmom, not a full-time mama. I can't call myself a parenting expert, but I think we can all agree that's probably not the most advisable way to parent a child and to encourage a child to meet the needs or to please a parent, right? I think we all agree that's true. And so I think it's just fascinating to see how many of us do that to ourselves, right? How many of us are essentially parenting our subconscious in a way that's just so mean and abusive. And then we're really confused when we're not getting the things we want, when our brain's not working for us. And we can see how that would what happens if you scold a kid? Either the kid shuts down, right? Or I don't know, I do have a stepson who's now 11, but I've known him since he was 4, right? If a kid is scolded or if a kid is yelled at, they usually just want to yell some more, right? They just want to kick in their heels and be heard more and more. And that's what I think so many of us unintentionally do with our brains. We start to identify these things, and then we just are the meanest parents to ourselves, to our own brains. And then we wonder why we don't get different results. And so I want us to all play with this idea of, well, if this is the case, and if my subconscious mind is kind of a small child who's like trying so hard to please me and always doing everything in my own best interest, what if I took a different approach? What if I assumed my brain was so right and so lovely and like just applauded it and praised it and like just gave it all of that credit for being such an amazing brain and soothes it in that way, and then I could just tell it something different I wanted. Like, wouldn't that be a fascinating different approach? Isn't that so wildly different than what most of us do when we notice a so-called block, or we notice something that is, you know, keeping us from hitting that income ceiling? I feel like it's so easy for all of us when like, oh my gosh, I've been getting in my own way, and now I just notice I'm like not booking clients because of X, Y, and Z, right? And to start shitting on ourselves instead of like, oh my gosh, of course this is true. And like, thank you, brain. I love you so much. You're doing such a good job taking care of me. I mean, like we can just see the difference there. And we can just see if we were actually speaking to a small child, what the difference in the response would be. I hope this is tracking because I'm like throwing out all sorts of like analogies and metaphors on our live stream today, while also talking about the brain. So I hope this is tracking for everyone when it comes to payoffs, because I think we want to first notice that if you're hitting that income ceiling, again, if you already have the clarity around your offer and that channel for the money to come in, you have the strategy and action you're showing up for consistently, and you're still hitting that ceiling, it'd be really interesting to check in with, what is it about making more money, booking more clients that you don't actually want? Like, why does it feel so good and so yummy to stay stuck? And then what I think is so important is to make that right. So Carolyn Elliott talks a lot, like I was saying, about like getting off on that. And I think it's just an like almost an element of like letting your brain just say, oh, you're doing such a good job protecting me. We are just doing, it just feels so good. And thank you so much for keeping me so safe to not make more money. I'm just like so proud. Like, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but I think the more we can momentarily indulge that, the more, remember we talked about the brain wanting congruence. That's all it's trying to create right now. So if your exterior, results aren't what you say they want, how they might be congruent to what your subconscious, your child brain might want. If you can give that to your brain, right? You don't have to go out and exteriorly create that. You can just give that to your brain as the adult, so to say, which means you're then free to choose something new, to choose something else. Otherwise, your subconscious brain is going to go out and try to create that in your exterior. I hope this is tracking, which is why I think Carolyn Elliott's work is really genius, because so much of what she talks about is really going into that shadow side. And like, she talked about like literally getting off on it, but like really going into the pleasure of those payoffs essentially, so that you can give your brain what it wants before leaning into the next step. So I think that is something that I would invite everyone to play with, as just a different way to think about this, and as a different way, so you're not just making yourself wrong for everything, but also as a different way to try shifting the narrative and the reasons you might be preventing yourself from that next level of income. I'm just checking my notes real quick. And so what I was sharing in my notes with, you can't see my notes, but what I want to share with you from my notes, when I think about that dating example I shared a little bit earlier, right? As soon as I notice, oh, I'm the common denominator, and oh, wait a second, this is what I actually want. I'm doing everything right here. It was so interesting. As soon as I could let my brain indulge in, I'm doing this exactly right. It's not that I'm fucking up dating. It's not that I'm not good at relationship. It's that I literally don't want to be in one, and I'm doing everything right here. And I could just kind of indulge in that thing of like, well, let me just indulge and have some pleasure and joy around the fact that I want to be single. I don't want to date. This feels so good. It was really fascinating to see then also how quickly, once I allowed that to be true, I got to enjoy that part of being single the way I wanted to, and how short-lived that was. And I met my husband not too long after that, because then I moved through that. I gave myself what I actually wanted, right? I gave myself that congruence, and then I kind of got over it. And I was like, all right, I got this payoff. This feels good. I'm like now ready for a relationship. And that's right around when I met my husband. And I think I've shared different like interesting mindset things around that, but I don't think the same. I know the same is true in business because I see this with clients all the time. What I feel like is important to see from that is it's sort of like there's a two-step there, right? So there's the making your brain right part, but then there's also seeing what is that thing your brain actually wants? How can you fulfill that, or how can you create safety around that? Because that's the other piece I want everyone to have just something to like play with as a way to really shift this so you are busting through those income ceilings. So let me explain this in a better way. if we use the dating example, right? First, I had to identify kind of what that payoff and gain for me was in terms of kind of attracting unavailable people and kind of like always being single. And I had to identify like, oh, well, it's because I don't actually want to be in a relationship. Like, I don't want to be in a relationship more than I want. Like, I'm getting what I actually want, not what I say I want. And so like the first thing was identifying that. Then it was sort of like relishing in that, like making myself right. Like, just like, thank you, brain. Like, you are just so good at giving me exactly what I want. And then it was also allowing myself to get that need met and to also see why, if I like, I'll compare this to it in business for a second, but like, what need did I have to have met? And like, what was it then if I was saying I wanted a relationship that was kind of preventing me from getting that? I'm hoping this is tracking for everyone. So it was kind of like going through that process mindset wise, but then also seeing like, oh, well, the needs I needed to have met was like some unattachment, some fun, some exploration, but so like that I needed to meet, right? Like that was something that was the payoff and benefit. That was the secondary gain. And I needed to make sure I really thanked my brain for that and make sure that need was being met. And if I also am consciously saying I wanted a relationship, I had to look at like, well, then what is like kind of that fear that's keeping me from having that? And I had to look at, oh, here are some of my fears coming up. Now that's the thing, like that's the work I now need to do. So what if we kind of lay this over business now, it's kind of the same thing of, let's say you're scared to book clients, you don't actually want clients because it feels like it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to be so stressful if you have a gazillion clients. And that's when you identify like, why don't you want to book clients? Why don't you want to make more money? You're like, oh, because I would feel really overwhelming. I actually just want to Netflix and chill and just like have some like free time. Great. Like first we make your brain, like we identify the payoff, we make your brain so right and just like relish in that and cheer it on and like lean into the yumminess of like how good your brain is at getting those needs met. Then we want to give you that. Like, how do we literally give you that spaciousness and that like Netflix time? Like, how do we give your brain that? Right. And then if we still want to also look at, we're also breaking through an income ceiling. We're not just saying give your brain and like the child part of your brain what it wants. It's also then how do we shift to what does your brain actually want, or what is it saying it actually wants consciously? Once we've kind of shifted through that, it's then looking at, great, so then what are the fears there that are coming up? What doesn't feel safe? Like, why are these needs needing to be met in this way? How can we start to create safety around the thing you say you want? Right? How could I, in the dating example, start to create safety around a new relationship, right? Because I had all sorts of fears about like being in another relationship and like having to stop, like, you know, I think all of us humans have those things come up, right? Those are the fears I then need to look through. How do I create safety around that so I can start to want that as much as so I can start to want that and it can start to feel safer than I don't want it. Same in the business. Once we kind of identify these things and we've shifted through them, how can we start to identify, okay, so now the thing I'm saying I wanted, what's coming up for me there? What are those fears there? How can I start to work through these fears? Because these very fears are now the thing that is making me want to hang out in Netflix and chill land. And that like, I gotta let my like parent conscious brain start to like, yes, we get to like love on the child and like, we're also going to make sure the child gets what it needs, right? Like if we have a child who doesn't want to eat vegetables and they're having a temper tantrum, we can love on them, make them right for that, and like give them some mac and cheese. We need to make sure at a certain point we're also like, okay, but what is about the broccoli that you're scared of? Like, how do we create some safety around the broccoli? How do we also get you the vegetables you need? We can't just let you have a temper tantrum and get your way all the time. I hope this is tracking for everyone. So what I would say there, and I think this is so much of the tool we walked through last week, but just seeing like a different way to look at this is like, this is where you get to see your specific work for you in your business. If you mindset wise, if you want to go to that next level, if you want to break through that income ceiling, right? It's like identifying why you don't want it more than you say you do, making all of that right, indulging that, like loving on your brain or your inner child, whatever we want to call that, right? Loving on that, but then also looking at what are those specific fears? What are those specific things coming up for you now? If you want to now also start to lean into the thing you want, and how can you start to create safety around that? So if it's, I think like we'll use the same client as an example, right? Then we have to also start to create safety around, how do we create safety around working and knowing that you're not gonna burn out? Or if it's the client capacity example, how do we create safety around having a larger capacity? How do we create safety if it's the fear around being able to handle more money and being great at money, like how are we literally starting to create safety around that? And is this something that's more a nervous system regulation type thing, or is this something where it's like we actually need to put like this might be a new strategy, but a strategy that's really serving your mindset, that's helping you like create that safety? It might be something like a boundary. It might be something like I need to go learn something, get some financial literacy. It might be that I need to look at I'm setting up my schedule and really putting some clear parameters around that so that I don't burn out, or get and hire some support to help me learn how to bring on a team and manage them. Like, what are the things I need so that I can feel safe, so I can start to want the thing I say I want more than I want the payoffs and benefits of not getting it? Because yes, we want to make your brain right and love on it so that we can kind of like soothe it enough to be able to set it up to create that strategy and plan for you to get the thing you want on a mindset level. I hope this is making sense. I think it's my coach who has said this to me. Maybe it was someone else. I'm not exactly sure who, but I said this to a client today. It's sort of like if you were being chased by a tiger. While you're being chased by a tiger and your brain is freaking out, is not the time to like start chanting affirmations or to start creating a new plan. Like first we have to like let the brain do its thing and get you to like safety or get its needs met, right? And then once you're in safety, once you've gotten your needs met, gotten away from the tiger, we're in the hut, we're safe, right? Then we also want to see, well, my whole life's goal is not to just avoid being eaten by a tiger, right? I probably want something more than that. It's just in that moment when I'm freaking the F out, what I want more than anything that I say I want, right, is to not be eaten by a tiger. But while we're running away from the tiger, we can't be running away from the tiger saying, I want to book clients, I want to book clients, I want to make like way more money. It's like, we got to run away from the tiger, create that safety, make our brain really right for keeping us safe and alive, and then get really clear on what we need to have in place mindset wise to create safety for that next step and to see there's no tigers or elephants or bears or anything that are going to hurt us there. Okay, see if I have anything else in my notes. So I'll just kind of close on this piece here. Unless you have any questions, please feel free to throw those at me. But I think just seeing that essentially, as long as the payoff of not getting the thing you want feels bigger than what you say you want, your brain is always going to try to make you as the parent host, right, happy by giving you the thing with the bigger payoff, right? That's kind of like your brain is just like, how do I keep you safe? How do I give you the thing that I think has the bigger payoff? So as long as making more money, booking more clients, scaling your business, having the epic launch, having more people in your programs, as long as the payoff of not getting that is bigger than the payoff of actually getting it, right? As long as it feels better to avoid all of those things that feel scary, and there is a payoff, or there's a payoff of you get to like commiserate with people. I think there's so many different payoffs we can get there, right? Sometimes one of the payoffs is just literally, I don't want to leave the tribe and all of my friends are under earning, and if I suddenly make a lot of money, they might kick me out of the tribe, right? But as long as that payoff feels bigger to your subconscious mind than the thing you say you want, making $1 million, crushing through this income ceiling, right? There's going to be that friction, and your brain is going to fight for the congruence. It's going to fight for so hard the thing that makes you feel safe or the thing that gives you that bigger payoff. And so I think just the more you can keep that in mind, the more you can stop making yourself wrong, and also stop solving the wrong problems in your business. Because I think what happens so often when this is going on, this is when we want to start to solve things like, let me go tinker with my strategy. Let me go create like the 17th funnel. Let me go find a new social media strategy. Ask me how I know. This was my whole first year in business. I played this game and I was like suddenly like learning about Facebook ads, even though I've never used a Facebook ad in my life. And I was like learning about Pinterest. This was like, Pinterest was a big thing, like making pins on Pinterest, even though like that's not even my strategy. But because I just so like wanted to, that just seemed like the easy thing to solve instead of identifying everything we're talking about here. And this is literally the work I did that helped me really go from having a handful of clients to 5K months to 10K months to 20K months to 30K months to 40K months, right? All from one-on-one. Then this is the same work with all of my clients. And so I reflect that to you just to say it's super normal, but we want to have these sorts of questions and this clarity because it's just so easy to get wrapped around the surface level presenting problem your brain wants to hand you, especially when we know your subconscious mind wants you to stay stuck because that feels better than getting the results you want. And so then it's going to be very easy, if that's the case, for your brain to keep handing you challenges, surface level challenges to solve that don't actually move you forward, right? This is how we feel like we're just stuck in a circle and kind of like on that merry-go-round in business, or like throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks. But when we're like, wait, I've just been here again, and I've been here again, and I've been here again, a lot of times it's because of what we're talking about here. It's not because you're not good at strategy. It's not because you're not good at business. It's most likely because you're solving the wrong problem, so to say, in your business because your brain really wants you to, because your brain subconsciously is enjoying that payoff of staying stuck more than your conscious brain is going to enjoys what's going to happen when you reach those results. So I think just giving yourself that grace around this, because I hope if you take nothing else away from this live stream, you're seeing the idea here is then not to make yourself wrong, but it's more to be like, oh my gosh, this is so good information, good to know. And my brain is just so good at its job. Like it just feels really, really yummy right now. It feels really yummy to be stuck. It feels really yummy to not make this money. Like it just feels so good. How can I just relish in that? How can I just make my brain so right? How can I go a little Carol Elliott on this and just like get off on this? Like, how can I do that? Like, how can I just be like, look at how good I am. Look how great my brain is at giving me exactly the thing I want. Because when you can make yourself right in that way, right? Like that's what opens up that space to be like, cool, now we can get to the real work. But first we got to like move through that. Otherwise you're just going to keep hitting that wall, because again, your brain is going to keep giving you that thing that it actually wants and that payoff that feels bigger and safer to it subconsciously. So I hope that is helpful for you. I'm just seeing, do I have any other notes here? I'm trying to be mindful here on time. The last piece I'll share, I'll just talk on this really quickly because we were talking about this at the end. After you've kind of cleared through that and you're looking at the thing you say you want, I do think it's really helpful to look at, and we were talking a little bit about how do you create safety around this, and that's one of the steps in the framework we shared last week. And I just want to touch on the creating safety around that for a second. Because I think sometimes, and I don't think we got to talk about this last week in the masterclass, I think sometimes when we hear create safety around something and create safety around the thing you say you want, breaking through that income ceiling, the $1 million, the 6 figures, the 3 more clients, the booked out business, the epic launch, right? And when we hear, okay, now I want you to go create safety around that. How do you create safety around that so that you can actually want that, so it can feel safe to want? I think so often our minds interpret that to mean, how do I make this so that nothing bad ever happens and there's no discomfort ever? That is safety, and that is now my new goal. And what I really want to invite you to notice is that is just another way to keep yourself stuck. That is not what safety means. Safety does not mean, how do I avoid discomfort? How do I make sure I never fail? How do I make sure everything is perfect so that there's never a moment that I feel uncomfortable? That is just the same pattern looping around of, I don't want this more than I say I want it, and the payoff of staying stuck feels better. As opposed to, how can I create safety means, how can I notice I would be okay? Everything would be just fine. I can handle it. I am resilient. I could literally handle it. If it wasn't perfect, if I did make a mistake, if it didn't happen the way I thought it would, if I did fail, right? If the worst case did happen, how could I create the safety to see I would be alive, I would be fine, I could handle it, or that I would have a plan to navigate it? That's creating safety, right? If we even think about, this is like a horrible example, but it's just what popped into my brain. If we think about safety mechanisms in a vehicle, right? They're not there to tell you that you're never going to get into a car accident. They're there that if you do get into a car accident, you know that you're safe and you're going to be able to walk out of that car okay, right? Like, we put our seatbelt on, not because we won't ever need it. We don't have airbags in a car because we're never going to need it. They're there as a safety mechanism. They protect you and keep you safe if something does happen. So I invite that because I think sometimes the safety piece and I don't think we got to talk about this last week. I think it can just be a little confusing, and I see this with clients a lot where I have to lovingly challenge them and say, no, safety is not, how do we make sure the scary thing never happens? That's just perpetuating the fear. That's just we're just kicking the can further and further. Right? That's not the goal in business. The goal in business is not how do we set you up so that you never have an uncomfortable moment. It's how do we set you up to feel safe if you have an uncomfortable moment? How do we help set you up to see that you can so handle it that you want that uncomfortable moment and what's on the other side of it more than you want to avoid it and stay safe. So hopefully that's tracking there. That's the part I really want you, after you make your brain all right, that I really want you to play with and do the work around. Because when you can create that kind of safety, that's true safety, as opposed to how do I just avoid anything bad ever happening? That's not safety. That's called avoidance. That's when people become agoraphobic, right? They just stay inside their home all day long. They're like, look how safe I am because I never ever leave my house. Like, Or we could build up a lot of resilience and strength and a mindset that knows you can handle anything, that feels super safe to leave your home, right? Same here in your business. What we really want to be mindful when we think about this and we think about safety. Safety is not how do I avoid something bad happening in my business. It's how do I create the safety and the resolve that I can handle anything and I'm fucking unstoppable and I fucking got this shit, and I want that more than I want to stay like so-called safe that I want to hide out. I want that result. That result is so worth any of that discomfort that I need to move through. That is so exciting to me. I want that more than I don't want it, than I want the payoffs from not getting it. Okay, I hope this is helpful, and I hope this was helpful to talk through today. I feel like this was like a part 2 to our masterclass. So again, if you missed it, check that out, because we walked more through an actual 7-step process to help you work through and alchemize some of those money mindset blocks. Today was really understanding the more of that concept and really what can have us from a mindset perspective really limit ourselves with income, with clientele, but just when we're hitting those ceilings in business. And I really wanted to unpack some of those secondary gains, the payoffs a little bit, and just understanding how to play with your mind a little bit. So you're not making yourself wrong, but you're also not staying stuck in that place where you're just making yourself right, and you're not taking that to the next level that also propels you forward and that has the kind of mindset that's going to allow for that momentum that does let you break those income ceilings. I know there was a lot of different pieces here. So if you have questions, now we're on the replay, throw them at me. I'm so available to answer your questions. That's what I'm here for. If you have anything you want me to go deeper into on another live stream, or that you're just curious about, throw that at me as well, because I do these for you and I want them to be valuable for you. And if this is something you want support around, if you're like, oh, hearing this was really eye-opening, I really could use some mindset support so that I can really work through those ways I'm keeping myself stuck because it subconsciously actually feels kind of good, and I want to break through this so I can break those income ceilings in my business so that I can book more clients, book out, have those epic launches. Or if you were hearing the beginning part of the live stream where we're like, oh, I actually don't have a clear offer or container or channel for my money to come into. I actually am not sure that I'm really clear on my strategy. It feels like a little fuzzy, or it does feel a little bit like I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall. I'm not sure that I actually do have a sales process in place. Or if I'm honest, I'm not actually showing up for it. It's like kind of sporadic stop, start, action. That's literally my coaching framework. I support clients with the clarity, mindset, strategy, and action to help them have epic, record-breaking income months, to get booked out, to make money on their own terms. And that is all beautiful, but between you and me, my clients know this as well. The stuff that really gets me excited is the on your own terms part, and just really supporting clients to feel more regulated in their nervous system and to actually enjoy their businesses and to have a really sustainable way to make money, and to do so in a way where they're actually like loving themselves and just feeling every part of their life feel better. That's what gets me excited. So if that's you and that's something you want support around, I would love to connect with you. I will drop a discovery call link. We do tend to be fully booked, so I have limited spots that are opening up in the future, so there is no pressure, but I would recommend booking sooner rather than later so we can get you booked into one of those spots as they become available, or one of my coaching intensives. And then I'll be back next week with another live stream for you all, and we will hang then. Lots of love, y'all. Bye.